Hi, Bothered Brigade. Here's what's bothering me today. I know we already did basically a very big special Sunday sum up yesterday talking about the pandemic and everything. And definitely doing a bit better than my regular videos. So thank you all for watching, and for new subscribers here, thank you. Welcome to the shit show. But you know, that was yesterday, and that was a very special edition, but there was still some kind of stuff that happened that I kind of just want to rant about and talk about, because I don't want to suffer alone. So thank you all for being here. But with that being said, this isn't really another Sunday sum up. So let's just call it a Monday mashup, and it's totally not just a copy of the concept. So here's the other stories from the week that I wasn't really able to talk about, but I feel it's really worth talking about and mentioning and just ranting about. Priti Patel vows to curb eco-protests and asylum appeals in 2022. The Home Secretary has said she intends to crack down on eco-protesters and end the legal merry-go-round of spurious asylum seeker claims in 2022. So if you can't tell, this lady is just one of the worst people imaginable. And this means she's the Home Secretary over in the UK, over in good old Britain. And their government is led by, of course, Boris Johnson and the Conservative Party, which should pretty much tell you all you need to know about their terribleness. And so here they are once again cracking down on apparently spurious asylum seeker claims and people protesting for, you know, the audacity of caring about the environment and climate change. And we got some stories about that. But first, we still need to focus on this story a little bit, because what the hell? Spurious asylum claims. You know, most of them aren't, and those that are found to be spurious, well, guess what? They get sent back. Like, this isn't an actual issue. This is once again a rich and wealthy, powerful country just punishing poor people. I am so absolutely done with it. And cracking down on eco-protesters while, you know, we have increasing evidence that our actions are negatively impacting the climate and our livelihoods. How dare they, right? Like, oh God, this lady and that whole government over there are terrible. Speaking of things that are terrible, I guess we need to talk about Biden's America again for a hot second. So also last week, it came to my attention that apparently the LAPD has shot 6 and killed at least 5 since last Saturday. One of the most recent was a man killed at an Eagle Rock gas station, and he was reportedly armed with a knife and advancing on officers. But at the same time, like, I've seen other videos of police officers when it's a white person with a knife or a wrench or something, and they're advancing on officers, and they're just like circling their cop car or eventually pull out their taser. Instead, several cops will just shoot unarmed people. Like, there's clearly a disconnect going on in policing, and it should absolutely be addressed. But unfortunately, we aren't addressing it. In fact, police budgets continue to rise. But seriously, LAPD shot 6 people, 5 of whom died in just 1 week. And again, that was, you know, the end of the year / start of this year. So, not really optimistic about the rest of the year in terms of the LAPD finding a fucking soul, right? But it also speaks to the fact that, unfortunately, even with, you know, the year-long protests that was happening around the country and in other countries, like up here in Canada, about injustice and saying Black Lives Matter and pushing to defund the police. All right. Where's the gains outside of course, Detroit Will Breathe, which we've talked about before? And there's a few other examples of some victories here and there. There is good news. People in Minneapolis are instead calling each other instead of the cops. So sure, there is progress, but it just really shows how much progress needs to be made. And organizations like the LAPD are definitely not helping. And then speaking of protests in Biden's America, there was the following revelation. Good afternoon. The Biden administration has asked the Supreme Court to rule that federal agents cannot be held accountable for retaliating against protected speech, i.e. what Trump's feds did to protesters in Lafayette Square and Portland, Oregon. You know, the more things change, the more they stay the same. It's really, really wild to see all the ways in which Biden is as bad or worse than Trump. Yes, he's better in a few other ways, But that's really just not saying much at this point. Look at the goddamn situation in America. Has Biden meaningfully addressed this? Has he meaningfully improved it? Has he not, just continued to try and push down marginalized people and engage in horrible stuff like this, basically targeting protesters? But the Dems are so much better, and that's why we gotta vote blue no matter who, right? And so on the subject of protesters, and kind of tying into what we talked about earlier with the attempted criminalization of environmental protests over in Britain, I wonder why they're protesting. Might it have to do with the fact that we saw stories like this last week? 67-degree day in Kodiak, Alaska sets new statewide temperature record. Now for the Canadians and Europeans in my audience, that's basically just over 19 degrees Celsius. In Alaska. Now, granted, Kodiak Island is in southern Alaska. It's not like, at the very top in the Arctic Circle. However, still incredibly disturbing, given that it's still a very northern latitude and it's winter. 20 degrees in what's seen as a cold Arctic northern climate in winter. And unfortunately, that's not the only terrible climate-related story we have from that week.
Homes that were destroyed earlier in this fire. Again, confirmed 580 homes destroyed in Superior, but that number is definitely going up because we're watching what appears to be at least a dozen more burning right now live on TV.
And as the governor said just moments ago to those community members, these neighbors who now know that their homes are lost, that the Colorado community is here for you. And
that was the Marshall Fire that was going on in Superior, Colorado last week. It was an out-of-control firestorm with like 100-mile-per-hour winds at the end of December in Colorado. Nice, snowy, wintry, high-altitude Colorado, and that was happening. Gee, I wonder why people are talking about a climate crisis and a climate emergency and are increasingly frustrated and upset with government institutions and governments in general doing absolutely nothing to address this problem that impacts all our collective futures. But, that's just par for the goddamn course with our governments being absolutely terrible during this pandemic and during the economic crisis and the climate crisis. Like, basically, the entire ruling class is failing at what its, supposed job is, but it is doing so beautifully at lining pockets of the wealthy and getting rid of the spurned and ostracized in society at the behest of the capitalist class. Meaningfully address the pandemic? Deal with the climate crisis? That's a really big ask. How dare you ask that of me, the people in power? Are you a business and you want more free money from the government? Absolutely. No problem whatsoever. I will get that to you within 48 hours. It is so absolutely frustrating. And unfortunately, this is our grim shared reality. Not just in Britain, America, or here in Canada. There's similar stories like this from anywhere you care to look. It is a global problem, and unfortunately, these are issues that require a global solution, but those in charge of the global power structures have zero interest in doing that, and that is what's bothering me today.